Hi, everyone. This is Martin Pytela for the Life Enthusiast Health Shots. And today I have with me Andrew Cort, Dr. Andrew Cort, also MA and JD, lots of letters. I am just so impressed. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, when I'm reading your bio, I'm thinking, well, this is an exalted version of myself. I have had a career and interests that cover or cross over with yours so deeply it's not even funny. It's it's all the same lines, except you went deep.
Mm.
Perhaps we should try and cover it for people. Well, first of all, which would you like to highlight today? You have so many personalities.
Oh, I think I'd like to highlight my newest book.
All right, let's talk about that.
Okay. It's called Create Yourself Anew from Above Down. And the subtitle is By Choosing What You Prefer in This Multiverse of All Possibilities. And what it is a book about several things, including it's very clearly another book about manifestation techniques. What's specifically different about it is that the emphasis, and this is why I use the phrase from above down in the title, the emphasis is not trying to fix, oh, there it is, thank you, not trying to fix circumstances that you don't like, but rather taking a stance as the sacred being that you are at the high level of your inner spiritual reality. And from there, you are the source of power to choose what you want rather than fixing what you don't want. So I talk in chapter 1 about really changing your mindset. Once your mindset is changed, I talk about now clearing the way to use the useful tools of manifestation. And I mean clearing away the debris of all the negative beliefs and limiting beliefs that your subconscious mind has been repeating to you endlessly for all your life and is repeating in the background no matter how many times you say, I am wealthy, I am happy, and so forth. You have to get rid of those voices. And to tell you the truth, you can't get rid of them. There's nothing in this universe that disappears. But when you change, you release your attachment to them. And that frees you to attach to what you desire to have in your life. And so then I go through affirmations, visualizations, practicing gratitude and happiness, practicing courage, uh, learning to not react but to create. And the last 3 chapters, I specifically talk about abundance, health, and love.
Yeah. Andrew, when you do this, I just have the sense that you're skipping all the way to the finished product, in the sense that it took me a good while and multiple bumps of trying to arrive at understanding that you're completely right. But if
Hmm.
I were telling this to my 18 or 24-year-old, I wouldn't have had a clue. I wouldn't have had the understanding. I might have
Okay.
just simply missed it. I don't
Okay.
know.
Well,
I think it might be worth people's time to hear how you got here and why you
sure,
know what you know.
sure. I'll talk about my journey.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm 74 now, and I've always been very interested in spiritual things since college, even before. And I went through a kind of sequence where, when I was very young, like I think most kids, I considered life on Earth is a battle between good and evil, and you try to do the right thing and be nice to other people, be good to other people, and please God by your behavior, and win the battle between good and evil, at least on the inside, and make efforts on the outside. And I was a college student in the 60s, so it was very apropos to be fighting that battle on the outside. As some time went on, I came to a different conclusion. I started thinking that this purpose of life and spirituality was to, in Socrates' words, perfect one's soul, to become initiated as a higher being. And in so doing and setting an example that would also help the world, but more so than just spinning my wheels, being a do-gooder. So I've followed this interest in spirituality as being meant as a kind of initiation to a higher level of being. And for many years, I wrote a number of books about this. And my viewpoint was, for instance, all the great journeys in the Greek myths, in Christianity and Judaism and the Old Testament and Islam, all those great journeys in which people are going here and they're walking over there and they're saying this, that it's a symbolic story, that all the steps they're taking, all the processes they're going through to get from the state of slavery in Egypt to the state of freedom and communion with God in the promised land is a symbolic inner story for our inner journey from enslavement to this material consciousness back to communion with divinity. So I went through those stories and I followed those paths, and I need to say I still think that story is very important, and that is part of things, to be sure. But then there came a time not too many years ago when I started listening to some people's ideas, and I started mulling over in my head that maybe the purpose of being here is to just appreciate and enjoy this marvelous experience. That we're put in this incredible environment, this incredible world, and we should be grateful and love it and enjoy it and have fun. And so from there, I started really accepting that conceptually as part of a trio of all those things. But that was my focus, that it was about enjoying and appreciating the experience of being alive in this miraculous universe. And then I had to look at myself and say, if being happy is the purpose of life, I am not a very spiritual person at all. Because
you are missing a few pieces of happiness.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I had really spent much of my life being rather gloomy and serious. And I had what I consider, well, I can call them good reasons. They're not excuses, and ultimately nothing is a good reason, but I used them as a good reasons. Primarily when I was 23, I became very ill. I came down with a very severe case of arthritis and psoriasis. And the psoriasis was eventually covering like 85% of my body. And the arthritis, when I was 23 years old, had me walking with a cane. And this, of course, made me rather unhappy and bitter. And I remember when I was 23, going to Upstate Medical Center and trying to get help for these problems. It's up near Syracuse, New York, a good medical center with Syracuse University. And I was living in the area, and so that's where I went. And they first told me that I should just take a lot of aspirin. I said, all right. This was 1973.
Yeah.
So I went.
That's a super unenlightened line of.
Yeah. But I took a bunch of aspirin. Didn't help. Came back. They told me, well, try 10 aspirin a day. So I did that. Came back a few more times. Make a long story short, we got up to try 20 aspirin a day. And at that point,
by that time, you should be burning a hole in your stomach.
Well, that's what I figured was about to happen, which is why that's when I left medicine, at least for a while. I had had enough of that. And I actually found some help in the holistic field. And in fact, I got enough help from a chiropractor who did a lot of things, applied kinesiology and nutrition and acupressure and a lot of things. I got some help, and in my enthusiasm, I went off to chiropractic school and became a chiropractor myself. Over the next 10 years practicing in Manhattan, I had ups and downs, but overall, it really did keep deteriorating until after 10 years, I had to give it up. And that's when I started doing a whole bunch of other things in my life. The important part of the discussion right here is that I was very unhappy, very bitter. I really felt like I was a victim. I was very unhappy. Everything was the fault of God or other people or fate or something other than me. And one day, it occurred to me to ask myself, is it possible that I'm not miserable and unhappy because of these things? All these negative things in my life, are they happening because I'm miserable and unhappy? Am I the creator of this whole thing? And I started exploring that. And I started listening to people like Esther Hicks and other people talking about happiness, and that you don't wait for happiness. You become happy, and that's what attracts the life you want. And we're always attracting the life we want. And so my being miserable and feeling like a victim, I was attracting a life of misery and victimhood. But I started believing maybe I could change that. So I started working first on happiness and just finding ways to make myself feel happy, to remember the good things, to just try to be happy, to realize more and more that it was up to me, that I can be in control of my inner emotions. I don't have to be a passive recipient of my own emotions. So I was working on happiness for a while. And frankly, it did some good. If nothing else, I felt better. You feel better when you're happy. So it was doing some good, and some things started to change. This journey started about 7 years ago. So I'm working on happiness for a while, and one day I get this inner little message says to me, you're really not going to be able to maintain a state of happiness if you're not in a state of gratitude. And I thought about that for a while, and I realized, well, I was not particularly grateful. And in fact, I understood that if I'm not grateful, it's very hard to maintain happiness for any length of time. So I started working on gratitude. I started listing all the things to be grateful for, many blessings in my life, even though I had always put them secondary. But there were many blessings in my life. My daughter, my family, the teachers I've had in the spiritual world, my various professions, lots of blessings. But I wasn't really grateful. And I started working on that. So I started with things to be grateful for and worked through a process, gratitude journals and, starting every morning with gratitude and exercises like that. And I finally came to a place where I realized I was grateful for the experience of life. I was grateful for being here, for having this opportunity. So I worked with that for a while. And then another voice came in and said, there's something missing. And I realized I didn't really feel I was worthy, that there was a sense of unworthiness still deep within me. Even though I'm practicing gratitude and happiness, I felt a bit unworthy. So I started working on confidence next. And with confidence, first again, I listed all the things that I could be confident for. And there were, of course, many. And I thought about those for a while and, felt a little better about things, and eventually got to a place where I realized that I'm a child of the divine world. I'm part of God. I'm part of this sacred divinity. How dare I not be confident? And I realized that confidence isn't about being a special person. Confidence is about recognizing what I really am as a part of this divine world. So my confidence grew, my self-esteem grew. And then another step came in and said, well, confidence, just like happiness has to be upheld with gratitude, I realized confidence has to be upheld with courage. And I had questions about my own courage and my own history of whether I had been courageous or cowardly in different parts of my life. And I started working on that. I found ways to build up my own sense of self-esteem and my own sense of courage and bravery. And part of it was realizing, no one can really hurt me or anyone, because we're eternal beings and it's just all going to continue to exist. And what does it really matter if this body is hurt or knocked down or even dies in that great totality of things?
Well, Andrew, I'm looking at your website,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm thinking, well, let me read something out of it. I would like to express my appreciation and gratitude to Andrew for the amazing treatment he gave me on Friday. I had been in such pain after hurting myself, and the neurologists and orthopedists were limited to cortisone shots, surgery, and lots of ibuprofen in between. Well, I've been able to do a full yoga routine this morning with no pain whatsoever. Amazing treatment, says the signature. Well, that to me suggests that you were just not listening to the people, right? Like when you said you had doubts and whatever, were you using some kind of evaluation criteria that were not matching up with the outside impression of you?
Well, I've gone back into my healing practice, partly because of this journey I took, opened me up to becoming a much better healer and able to work again. Because it improved my love life, it improved my abundance, it improved my health tremendously. And I've gone back into practice. And with all my experience and empathy and all that I've gone through and all I've learned as a holistic doctor in chiropractic school and beyond that, I can help a lot of people. And my work has become much more about positivity and energy and transformation than just about getting rid of a pain in your elbow. Not that that's unimportant, but it's more. And so, yes, my healing practice and my writing, they've kind of melded together.
Yeah. This reminds me of that saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. You're back at the same place, but at a different level, right?
Yeah, spiral.
Yeah, spiral.
A spiral rather than a circle.
Not flatland, yeah. But it's really interesting that way. I mean, the words that you put on your website, like mentioning Tony Robbins and Esther Hicks in the same sentence, is really very cool to me. Right? You're operating at high performance as a human, and at the same time, you're seeing it from the greatest of perspectives, as you're mentioning the I'm immortal, really, or eternal as a soul. So what would I be worried about anyway?
Yeah. You mentioned at the beginning that your story matches in many ways my story, and the variety.
Right.
I've been a chiropractor, I've been a high school math and physics teacher. I became a lawyer. I was an attorney for a while. I'm an author of a number of books. I've been on stage. I've been a Lyft driver. I've done all kinds of things. And sometimes I would say to myself, I really haven't figured out what I want to be when I grow up. And being 74 years old, it should be about time that I did, because I keep changing. And I realized I had a kind of an epiphany just a couple of weeks ago. And I realized to myself, I have done all these things, and I've had my material reasons that I gave myself why I was switching here and doing that. But ultimately, there's so much to experience. And I think my soul has been just dragging me around to grow and change and evolve and never stop and keep looking for more things to experience, to taste every part of life, and to just enjoy and love all these different things. So, I certainly wouldn't have felt and said that 20 years ago, but I understand it now.
Yeah, for myself, I feel that I'm better able to relate to others when or after I've had these experiences, like having had some brush with chronic pain and real debilitation myself. I can relate to people, at least to the point where I can tell how they might feel.
Yes. Yes.
and likewise experiencing the wisdom of ages, reading the books that you read and just absorbing it in and sifting through it.
Mhm.
I think that when you're saying, well, this book that I want to promote, the last book, well, that's the culmination of your work. But I'm just wondering
Yes.
if the people who are listening to this podcast will find themselves exactly at the point where that book will speak to them. I think you should just reveal the whole journey, because sometimes you need something else as you're traveling
Mhm.
through the life experiences.
Well, after I finished, or thought I had finished it, a few good friends who were readers for me told me it needed a preface. It needed my story at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning. So I added that. It was the last thing I did was write the preface. It was my story and how I got here. So that is there. Um, Perhaps not every single detail, but a
Mm-hmm.
good synopsis of my journey, how I got there, why I wrote the book. And I think it's certainly not a book for everyone. There are going to be a lot of fundamentalist people who aren't going to want to read. The first line of my book is, "You are God." That's the first thing I say, the first sentence. And I know it's not going to be a book for everyone, but people who are open to shifting their mindset and creating their own lives and remembering who and what we really are, I think we'll get a great deal of value from this book. And if they follow my journey a little bit at the beginning and can empathize with that, just as I empathize with my patients and readers,
Right.
I think many people will get there.
Well, maybe they can open one of your older books, like From Joshua to Jesus, or the Love, Wisdom, and
Mm.
God, and they will illustrate the journey, how you got from where you started to where you ended.
Well, those weren't my personal journeys. That was
No,
Demeter and Persephone's journey, and Abraham and his journey, and Moses and Joshua and Jesus' journey and Muhammad's journey. But inwardly, it represents what advice and a kind of instruction manual for what should be our journey, if we're conscious and awake and want to. Don't have to.
yeah, and that's what I'm getting at, is that the journey of the hero. And you also mentioned Joseph Campbell in your readings, right? Or actually, no, that
Yeah.
was not just a casual acquaintance, right? This was a more deep experience
Mm.
where our hero, each one of us, has to go through a journey. It's not,
Yeah.
we just cannot arrive at the final stage ready made. We have to take the steps to get there.
Yeah. If we did that, we had no reason to come here.
Right.
If
Yeah.
we were just there to begin with. Well,
Yeah. I've had that metaphor presented to me on a hike, going up to a significant amount of work to an elevation, like hiking up a mountain. And as we're doing it, it's hard work. And with every, I don't know, whatever, 100 feet of elevation, the horizon's expanding wider and wider until we're standing on the peak and seeing a whole lot of the country from where we stand. Anyway, that reminded me of what we're describing as the journey.
it's interesting in I think Symbol's Meaning and the Sacred Quest. I think I tell the story in there. I talk about the story of the prodigal son and how you have these two brothers with their father. And Jesus even says in the commentary afterward, the father represents God. So we know this is a symbolic story, and that the father is God, and he's got these two sons. And one of them leaves and comes down here, takes his inheritance and leaves and comes into this world. And the other one stays where he is. And after some period of time, the son who has descended into this world gets all the way to the bottom and wakes up one day and realizes he's taking care of pigs in another man's pigsty. And he decides it's time to go home. And now he takes this long journey home and hopes his father will accept him. And when he gets there, the father does accept him, has a feast, and he's so glad to see him. And the other brother, who's been there all along, has been out in the fields with the flock, and he comes home and sees this party. And he's very upset. He says to his father, I've been with you all these years. I've done everything right. I've taken care of everything. I've done what I was supposed to do. And this little brat took your money and spent it on harlots and liquor. And now he shows up broke and ruined, and you welcome him back with this big party. And the father says, my son, everything I have is yours. But this, my son, was dead, and he's home now. And I take that story to mean that the son who stayed home and just remained just perfect is not of nearly as much value to the father as the son who went all the way down to the bottom and struggled all the way back and comes back with grit and experience. And he's much more useful to the father now.
Yeah, I see that in life too. Things that come to us easy are not nearly as well learned as the things that we have to work for.
Yeah. And he suffered, and he did everything wrong, and he was very naughty, and he just experienced everything good and bad. And that's what we're supposed to be doing here. Even the naughty part.
Even the naughty part. All right. So our healing birthright, that I thought was really important for the crowd that I operate in, where a lot of people come to Life Enthusiast seeking help with their health, just broken for whatever reason. Most of what I see is people broken because they have been miseducated about their food, their environment, their exercise. They are toxic, they're stagnant, they're traumatized, and not understanding how they got there. I think that you have the answer as well. I mean, you've traveled that route too.
Well, I have my answers. That book, Our Healing Birthright, was the first book I wrote back in like 1978. That was quite a while ago. I have a newer book, which is called The Real Cause of Sickness, The Real Cause of Pain and Illness, and What You Can Do About It. It's a short book. It covers the basic materials that were in that old book and a lot more new things in a very short explanation. The first part of the explanation is that that's it. I see holistic healing as, first of all, meaning the whole thing, everything, everyone who has a part in the healing professions and the healing activities and the healing habits that we use. It's all holistic. And what we individually need to do is simply choose what makes most sense to us and what works for us. But not simply listen to anyone who says, I have the answer. This is what everyone in the world should be doing and nothing else. Because whether that's medicine or chiropractic or homeopathy, if you take that stance, it's not holistic at all. Because it's all included. I then give my definition of holism, which I'll try to put in a very brief nutshell, that there are three parts to the puzzle to get ill and three parts to the puzzle to heal. To get ill, you need something to act negatively on the body. It could be a germ, it could be a trauma, it could be something genetic that's happening. It could be poison. It has to act on the body, and the body has to be receptive to it, which means it's not in its best shape to handle this action, probably because of poor nutrition and lack of exercise and lack of relaxation and stress. And again, possibly genetics, but epigenetics has shown that the whole genetic thing is really much less important than we thought. But what some people call the ground, the body that accepts what's happening as an active agent. And the third part of that, which binds it all together, is a conciliating force. It holds the things together and shifts them into a position, a particular relationship, that active agent and that messed up body. Well, how will it manifest can be shifted back and forth one way or another by this third force, which is kind of like an enzyme, but it's basically the immune system. Because even when an active agent acts on a deteriorated body, the body has all kinds of ways to deal with it. And if it doesn't, this third thing is missing, a powerful immune system and the other systems. And that part of the picture is influenced not only by physical things, but also by psychological, emotional, and spiritual things. It kind of comes down to, I know that if I have a patient come in to see me who's there because his wife or her husband made them come and they believe there's nothing I can do for them. They're absolutely sure I can't. They're right. I won't be able to do anything for them because their belief system will overcome anything else. It's so strong. On the other hand, if someone comes in absolutely certain that I'm God's gift to healing and I'm definitely the right person to see no matter what, well, they will get well. And that placebo effect, which people discard and say, oh, that's just a placebo effect, that's the most powerful force in the material universe, in my opinion. You can change physical matter with consciousness, and you can learn to control it. But getting sick requires some combination of all three. And getting well, some combination of all three. Putting a good force, active force into the body. Cleaning up your habits and eating well and eating right and doing all the right things to take care of this temple. And getting your state of mind into a pro-healing, pro-healthy, positive state of being. All of that has to take place in some combination. That's why not everyone dies from smoking cigarettes. They don't all get cancer. It's a carcinogen, but all these other factors are involved, and some people don't subside to the carcinogen and some do because of this combination of things. And that's the whole three-way holistic picture in my opinion.
Yeah, I would name them physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual in the layers. Yes. And I think it's the invisible part of it that actually holds sway over top of it all. Mind over matter, 9 times out of 10, in my estimation.
Absolutely. And I'm well aware that if you go through life believing this is a harsh, miserable place, harsh, miserable things will happen in your life. And if you go through life believing this is a beautiful, magnificent blessing, beautiful, magnificent blessings will come into your life. And that's health and transformation of all parts of one's life. It's the way the universe works. And we take it backwards. We wait for it to get better and then we'll be happy.
Yeah, there it is. Describe your reality and it will manifest. I will see it when I believe it.
Yeah. And in fact, you will always be given exactly what you believe you will be given. The world's a mirror.
Yeah, and so it's so bloody simple. All you have to do is snap your fingers and paint the picture inside of your heart, and there it is.
Well, I wouldn't say it. I would say it's in a sense it's simple because that is all it is, really. But it's not simple because we're so stuck and we don't know how to do it. So, for instance, if you change your mindset and start saying, I'm living in a magnificent universe, I'm a sacred being, this is all wonderful. But you have an inner voice that's been telling you for the last 60 years, no, it isn't. No, you're not. This sucks. You don't know what you're doing. It's been saying that for 60 years, and now for the last week and a half, you've been saying this other thing. Well, who's going to win that argument? It's the fixed belief that's really undercurrent of everything. That all has to shift. And that doesn't just happen instantaneously.
So have you found some tool? Yeah, have you found some tool that can do that?
What's that?
Have you found some tool that in fact helps people make a shift once they become aware?
I have found tools that help. Work that I do with my patients includes getting into a meditational dialogue where they ask their higher self and seek inwardly. I get them into a kind of hypnotic state, and then they seek inwardly, what am I believing about myself that's causing this? What am I afraid of if I really did live the life I want? And try and bring those things up into the light. You bring things up into the light of consciousness, they dissipate because dark things don't like the light. But of course, there's a lot of those things. There's not one belief causing all of this. And you might have to go through it a few times because it's very stubborn and recalcitrant. Once you get that cleared away, you have things like affirmations. And people, most people know you have to say them the right way in the present, and they all know these sort of skills about them. But something I think people miss is you better repeat them every day, as I did for years, if you want to convince your inner self of something new. You don't just say it. You say it again and again and again and again, and then you work on your limiting beliefs, and then you say it again and again. And over time, it starts becoming your new second nature. Now, there are ways to make this go faster or slower, but it's going to take time because we're what we are, and we've experienced what we've experienced, and we're impatient, but it's going to take time. But it can be done. People can change and transform.
All right. And you offer all of this at your website.
Yeah, well, I offer it in my book to a degree, and I offer it with my patients. I work on Zoom. I can see people on Zoom as well as in my office here. And my writing is all about this. There are a lot of affirmations, and there's a lot of advice about getting yourself into a hypnotic theta wave state, to repeat them over and over again. And if you just do this today, you're wasting your time. There's all sorts of good advice and information about really taking seriously, I've had enough and I'm going to change. And I can change because I'm a sacred being and I can choose the life I want.
Indeed. Let's invite people to sign up. You will find this at andrewcort.com. Cort is C-O-R-T. Andrew, C-O-R-T.com. Go find the website. You will find links to the treatments. You will find links to the books. The books are also available.
Thank you for saying that. I just want to add, please sign my email list so I will send you that little book I talked about as a free gift if you sign my email list. The real cause of pain and illness. That's I give that away if you sign the email list. And over time there'll be other tips and stories, and if I come up with a new book, I'll send you that information and so forth. But read the whole website.
Yeah. I feel confident that whatever information comes from you, Andrew, is sifted through years of intense contemplation, study, and experience. So I honor the work you've done.
And listening to what you've said in your questions, you're right. I can tell we're on the same wavelength. We've got a lot of similarities in our journey.
Indeed so. But today was about you, and I so appreciate having met you, and you can expect my name on your mailing list.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for having me. And thank you, everyone who listens.
All right, andrewcort.com. This is Martin Pytela for Life Enthusiast Health Shots, life-enthusiast.com. Thank you.
Hey! Hey!